There's a lot of fighters that come into the MMA scene and are absolutely liked and admired by the community, but then there's certain fighters that go from being liked to disliked by many. Today we're going to be looking at 5 fighters that at one point were liked by a lot of fans in the MMA community to now being heavily disliked by lots of people. So let's get straight into the video. Coming in at number 5, we've got Ciryl Gane. Now when you look at Ciryl Gane, you can see that he's a very technical and talented striker. His technique is a lot better than everyone in the heavyweight division, and great speed and fancy striking. When you looked at Ciryl Gane, he was quite marketable and easy to present as your heavyweight champion. Ciryl Gane was given 2 chances to become the heavyweight champion, the first being against his former training partner Francis Ngannou, which he lost, and the second one against Jon Jones. In both fights you can see that Ciryl Gane lost because of the grappling, as it showed that grappling could be used against Ciryl Gane as it was his biggest weakness. However, grappling as a weakness was not the reason why a lot of fans hated Ciryl Gane. A lot of fans started to dislike Ciryl Gane because of his actions against Tom Aspinall in the fight that happened recently. In that fight, Tom Aspinall was eye poked twice by Ciryl Gane, which resulted in the fight being a no contest. Now you could argue that those eye pokes weren't intentional, however in the eyes of a lot of fans that was seen as a very cowardly move and disgusting, as it resulted in his opponent Tom Aspinall getting really hurt and fans getting disappointed heavily because of waiting for so many months for a decent heavyweight division fight, which got ruined as it ended in the first round because of Ciryl Gane's eye pokes. As a result, it's negatively impacted the image of Ciryl Gane and how people view him as a person. People now see him as a dirty fighter and a dirty cheat because of his actions in the octagon. Coming in at number 4 is Aljamain Sterling, and for a long time Aljamain Sterling was seen as a very respected grappler with really decent skill, and he wasn't someone that a lot of people hated at the time. However, the turning point was when he fought Petr Yan in their first fight. In the first fight, the fight ended due to a disqualification of Yan landing an illegal knee as Aljamain Sterling was on the ground, which resulted in Aljamain Sterling becoming the new bantamweight champion. However, in a lot of people's eyes, it was seen as Aljamain putting on an act, and they didn't really believe that he was that hurt by the knee. A lot of people thought that he was getting beaten in the first fight up until that incident with the knee, so in their eyes they saw that Aljamain getting hurt by the knee was his chance to be able to claim a disqualification win and become the new champion of the bantamweight division. This in a lot of people's eyes didn't solidify Aljamain Sterling as the actual champion. They saw that he was a person that just became a champion via circumstances and was just a champion on paper. It didn't also help Aljamain the fact that he did go around flexing the belt wherever he went as if he did beat Petr Yan to become the champion. Ever since then, Aljamain had to continuously prove himself in the eyes of the public to show that he was worthy of the belt, and fair enough, he did beat Petr Yan in the rematch, but in a lot of people's eyes the way he conducted himself after winning the belt by disqualification showed his character to be quite cowardly, which they didn't respect. Now moving on to number 3, we've got Ciryl Adesanya. Now at a certain point in time, Ciryl Adesanya was actually liked by a lot of people in the MMA community. He was someone who was unique, was always himself, was expressive, and had a great fighting style that was entertaining. However, as the years went on, you can see that Ciryl Adesanya's performances in title fights weren't as entertaining as his contender days, and as of recently you can see that he's been on a massive losing streak. So you can see that a lot of people could see he went from being a very talented striker and being entertaining to now someone who isn't as entertaining and on a massive losing streak, which did off-put a lot of fans who once revered him for his skills. There's also the situation regarding his dog, which did put a lot of people off Adesanya because they did find it to be really weird. So I'd say with Adesanya, you can see that he was someone that was quite exciting and interesting, and then later down the line started to lackluster in terms of his performances, started to decline, and ended up being exposed as a bit of a weirdo on the internet. Now moving on to number 2 on the list is going to be Jon Jones. Jon Jones went from the youngest MMA fighter to become a champion, beating everyone that was placed in front of him and being in everyone's number 1 GOAT list, to now being someone who's quite hated by a lot of people and critiqued as even being worthy of being mentioned in the GOAT list. Jon Jones has been through many controversies and there's a lot of reasons why people don't consider him and revere him the way they once did. For example, there's been constant cases where Jon Jones would eye poke people illegally in fights. There's been instances where he used substances which he wasn't supposed to, and it enhanced his performances in fights. There's also the whole Dominic Reyes situation where a lot of people thought that Dominic Reyes won the fight rather than Jon Jones. And there's also the Tom Aspinall situation where many people thought that Tom Aspinall was being ducked by Jon Jones, and a lot of people thought that Jon Jones was scared of losing for the first time against Tom Aspinall in the heavyweight division. There's also many cases outside of the octagon where Jon Jones has committed actions where in the eyes of the public has been seen as very out of line and disgusting. A couple of examples would be the domestic violence situation with his wife and the pregnant lady situation. With Jon Jones, it's his behaviour in and outside of the octagon that a lot of people can't stand and dislike severely. Now moving on to number 1 on the list is going to be Khamzat Chimaev. Now Khamzat Chimaev beforehand was seen as someone that was quite active, dominant and unbeatable, and that's what fans loved about him. He was someone that constantly fought in both weight classes in welterweight and middleweight. He was someone that was quite active and didn't mind fighting whenever. He was someone that was beating people with barely a scratch on his face and would absolutely dominate them and finish them. However, as time moved on, he started doing the exact opposite of what we liked about him. He started missing weight and started only fighting in the middleweight division rather than being in the welterweight division. He started to kind of look human, as his fight with Gilbert Burns did prove that he wasn't as invincible as he showed himself to be. He wasn't as consistent as he was in his earlier days in the UFC, as he had many breaks between fights, rather than beforehand where he was trying to fight as often as he could. And his most recent performance against Dricus du Plessis wasn't the most exciting fight of his career. We can see that the combination of not doing what made him special in the first place really started to make Khamzat quite disliked by the fans, as he went from someone that was quite active, fought a lot, to someone that's not fighting as often as he used to, and his latest performance against Dricus du Plessis wasn't as exciting as it could have been. You know, as Michael Bisping once said, MMA is a sport about what have you done for me most recently, and for Khamzat Chimaev, he hasn't been the most exciting finisher that has been active like earlier in his career. There's also the connections he has with Ramzan Kadyrov, who's the leader of Chechnya, who a lot of people find to be quite brutal and someone that's quite shady. So for Khamzat to have that connection does put a lot of fans off of Khamzat Chimaev. But anyways, that's been this video. These were just a couple fighters that I've noticed in the MMA community that aren't as liked as they used to be. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.